There is an alternative for the call method that we have learned in the previous lecture. Yes, apply is the alternative method for the call method. So instead of using call, you can try using apply in the same context or same situation. In other words, the apply and the call are just alternatives. You can choose between them. So what's the difference between call and apply? See, in case of call, we have to supply the arguments as normal arguments. First, you will write your object name which you want to pass for this keyword. And after that, you will just mention the argument names just as comma separated format. But in case of apply, you will supply your arguments in a special array. So you need to write an array, and in this array we have to write your arguments, and these argument values will be passed into that respective parameters. So this argument 1 will be assigned into the parameter 1, this argument 2 will be assigned into the parameter 2. You may wonder what is an array, but we will learn the arrays later in the next section. So for time being, you can remember that array is a group of values that are written in these square brackets. So you need to open the brackets here and write a set of values. These values will be the argument values will be assigned into respective parameters. So overall, whenever you want to pass the argument values as independent values, you can use call. But in case if you want to pass the argument values as an array, you can use apply method. That is the only difference between call and apply, but there is no more difference. But call and apply both can be used in the same context. That is, whenever there is a function that is present outside the object, but it wants to access the object by using this keyword, so you want to explicitly pass the object reference to that function. In this case, you can use either of call or apply method. That means in this example, this object reference will be passed as this keyword. So inside this function definition, you can use this keyword to access this particular object. So in the real world applications, you will use this apply in order to supply the object reference to the function which wants to manipulate the data of this particular object. Let's implement a scenario. For example, let's say there is a student and you would like to calculate total marks of the student. So let's create a file that is apply.js. And for example, there is a student object. And in this object, there is a student name and some other details. Alright. Now, outside the object, there is a function that is calculate total marks. So, this function receives a set of marks, for example, subject 1, subject 2, and 3. And this function will calculate the total marks, that is, sum of all these subject marks. Alright. Now it wants to print a message that is the student name and the total marks of the student. So I am using the backtick. Hey student, your total marks is so and so total marks. So in this place, I would like to replace the actual student name. But how is that possible? This function is not a method of that object, so it cannot access that object reference. So this function wants to access that particular object by using this keyword. In order to do so, as we have learned in the last lecture, we can use the call method. So I am trying to invoke that calculate total marks and then call. Then we can supply the reference of that student object as this keyword for that function. So we are trying to supply that student, and then we can supply the values for subject 1, 2, 3. Let's say for example 60, 70 and 80. This student object will be assigned into this keyword of this function. So inside here we can access this student object by using this keyword. So we can write like this dot student name. Not only student name, we can access all those properties by using this keyword, because within this function this keyword refers to the current object that is supplied from here. And of course we are supplying the values for those subject 1 and subject 2, that is 60 into subject 1, 70 into subject 2, 80 into subject 3. This is actual example for the call method that we have learned in the last lecture. And in this place, let's print total marks. So let's check the output. Oops, we have to print the same, right? Alright, we are getting that expected output. In this place, we have got the student name and here total marks. But the alternative for the call method is we can try using apply method. But in that case, we have to supply these argument values in the array. We will deep dive into arrays in the next section. But array is a group of values that are mentioned in these brackets. So these values are supplied into respective parameters in the sequence. So 60 will be assigned into subject 1, 70 into subject 2. Like this in a sequence, all these three values are respectively assigned into respective parameters. So the same gets added here and displayed in this result. So we are getting the same output here. So as you can see practically, the only difference between call and apply is that in case of call, we have to supply the arguments without the array like this. But in case of apply, we have to supply the arguments in the form of array. That is the only difference. But the context of call and apply is the same. That is, there is a function outside the object, but you want to supply your own object as this keyword in that object. That is a common point for both call and apply. And moreover, in case if you have multiple objects, let's say for example we have student 1 and student 2. So you can choose between student 1 and 2 while invoking the call as well as apply. For example, in this case, I would like to print the details for the student 1. But later you can repeat the same syntax and then supply the student 2 object as this keyword for that function. So in the first case, we are supplying the first object as this keyword for that function. So for the first execution, this keyword refers to the student 1 object. But in the second case, we are supplying the student 2. So when this same function is being executed for the second time, in that case, this keyword refers to the second student object. So let's check the output. See, for the first time, this function produces the output for student 1. And for second time, when we invoke the same function once again, the this keyword refers to a second object, so it produces the output for the second student. So like this, by using either apply or call methods, you can choose between objects. So you can supply either of the objects as this keyword for that function. That is the indirect benefit for that call as well as apply method. This is all about call and apply methods. But we have one more method in this sequence, that is bind. We will understand that in the next lecture.